Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're exploring the work of Krishnamurti,
Oh, cool.
specifically excerpts from his book, What Are You Doing With Your Life?
Okay.
So he was a pretty remarkable figure, born in India in 1895,
Yeah.
and he spent, over 6 decades traveling the world, speaking to huge crowds about the challenges we face in modern life. So what do you think is so compelling about his message? Why do you think it still resonates with people today?
Well, I think one of the things that really struck me about Krishnamurti was that he wasn't trying to, promote any kind of specific philosophy or religion.
Right.
His focus was really on encouraging individuals to think for themselves,
Yeah.
to question their assumptions, and to develop a deep understanding of their own, minds and hearts.
It's interesting you say that because Time magazine named him one of the 5 saints of the 20th century,
Oh, wow. Alongside who?
alongside figures like the Dalai Lama and Mother Teresa.
Wow.
But the interesting thing is he rejected all forms of authority.
Really?
Even his own. He believed that true freedom came from self-knowledge,
Okay.
from breaking free of the conditioning that shapes our thoughts and behaviors.
That's interesting.
So for our deep dive today, we're going to try to, understand some of Krishnamurti's core themes.
Okay.
And hopefully we can all gain some insights that might help us reflect on our own lives,
Yeah.
relationships, and our work.
Sound good.
What do you think?
Yeah, I'm excited to dive in. One of the things that really struck me right away about Krishnamurti's work is this emphasis on understanding the mind.
Yeah.
He's not just, he doesn't just want us to accept these theories or descriptions from other people.
Right.
He challenges us to become scientists of our own minds,
Yeah.
observing how it works, its patterns,
The patterns.
reactions, all without judgment, just kind of this pure observation.
I remember highlighting that part.
Oh, really?
And I was like, yeah, he's saying, don't just take my word for it.
Yeah,
Go and explore your own inner world
exactly.
and see what you discover.
Yeah, and see what's actually going on in there.
And he talks about how much our minds are shaped by our environment
Right.
and the culture we grow up in.
Absolutely.
Have you ever noticed how some of your reactions to situations are almost automatic?
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Like a knee-jerk response
It's like you're on autopilot.
based on your upbringing or social circle.
Absolutely. And it's like he highlights that.
Yeah.
That our consciousness isn't this like blank slate.
Right.
It's a product of time.
Yeah.
With layers upon layers of influences.
Yeah.
Both obvious and hidden.
Yeah.
That have shaped how we perceive the world.
And so much of our thinking is just a reaction to the past,
It is.
to our memories,
Yeah.
our knowledge, and past experiences.
Totally. It's like we're constantly referencing that
Yeah.
internal library of experience.
Yeah, it's like we're walking around with all this baggage from our past.
Right.
And it's coloring how we see the world and react to everything.
It's like a filter
Yeah.
that we're looking through.
But isn't thought also essential?
Of course.
I mean, we need it to function in the world.
Absolutely.
Right.
We need to be able to think to make decisions to solve problems.
Yeah.
But Krishnamurti's point is that thought,
Yeah.
while being essential, can actually solve the problems that it creates.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's almost like it gets stuck in this loop,
Yeah.
seeking security above all else.
Right.
But often just perpetuating the very anxieties that it's trying to escape.
Okay, so that leads perfectly into what he says about the pursuit of happiness and security.
Yes.
Something I think we can all relate to.
Absolutely.
He basically says that most people search for happiness externally
Mm.
through achievements, possessions, relationships.
Right. All the external things.
All the external things, you name it.
Yeah.
But he argues that true clarity comes from within, not from any external source.
That's a tough one.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's one of the most challenging, but also the most liberating ideas that he presents.
Yeah.
He's really challenging this notion that we need to, seek out gurus or follow specific dogmas
Right.
or achieve certain milestones to be happy.
Right.
He's really asking us to look inward, to find that contentment and peace within ourselves,
Yeah.
rather than chasing after it in the external world.
And to add to that, he connects this whole idea of seeking happiness to our relationship with impermanence.
Oh, that's interesting.
He seems to suggest that fearing impermanence, clinging to the idea that things should stay the same,
Right.
is a major source of our suffering. What do you
Yeah.
make of that?
It's such a profound insight.
Yeah.
And one that can be really difficult to fully grasp.
Yeah.
We're so conditioned to seek permanence,
Yeah.
to strive for stability and security.
Mhm.
But the reality is that, everything is in constant flux.
Yeah.
Change is the only constant.
Yeah.
And by resisting that truth, by clinging to how we think things should be, we create so much unnecessary suffering for ourselves.
He even goes so far as to say that desire itself is a major culprit in this cycle of suffering.
Oh, wow.
And it's not just about wanting material things.
Right.
It's this deep-seated craving for those pleasurable sensations to just keep going.
Yeah, that constant wanting more,
Yeah.
that insatiable hunger
Yeah.
that never seems to be satisfied.
This fear of missing out or things not going our way.
Right. It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It is, isn't it?
Krishnamurti describes this constant battle of opposing forces within us.
Yeah.
You know, this push and pull
Yeah.
between what we want and what we fear,
Right.
what we cling to and what we try to avoid.
Yeah.
And it's this inner turmoil that creates so much our anxiety and discontent.
Which brings us to another one of his major themes, fear.
Right, fear.
Krishnamurti talks about how we carry both internal and external fears.
Yeah.
On the one hand, there's the fear of real-world dangers,
Yeah.
like losing a job
Yeah.
or not having enough money to make ends meet. But then there's this whole other level of fear.
Right.
The fear of failure, fear of not being good enough,
Yeah.
fear of loneliness.
Yeah, all those deep-seated fears.
The list goes on and on.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on those deeper fears that he talks about?
I think those are the feels that can be the most debilitating.
Yeah.
Because they're often rooted in our sense of self-worth.
Right.
You know, we create these stories about who we are
Yeah.
and who we should be.
Yeah.
And then we live in constant fear of not measuring up to those stories.
And he seems to suggest that this fear is tied to our primal instinct for self-preservation.
Right.
It's like we've inherited this survival mechanism from our animal ancestors,
Yeah.
and it's constantly whispering in our ears.
Right.
Be careful.
Yeah.
Protect yourselves.
Don't take risks.
Don't take risks.
Stay in your comfort zone.
How do you think that plays out in our modern lives?
It's fascinating to consider
Yeah.
how those ancient instincts, you know, manifest in our modern world.
Right.
We may not be facing like physical predators in the same way that our ancestors did,
Right.
but we've created all these new predators for ourselves.
Right.
You know, we fear social rejection,
Yeah.
financial ruin, loss of status.
All things that threaten our sense of security.
Exactly, and belonging in the world.
It's like our minds are constantly scanning the horizon for threats,
Right, always on high alert.
even if those threats are largely imagined.
It's like that fight or flight response is constantly triggered.
But fear isn't the only emotion he explores.
No, it's not.
He also talks a lot about anger.
Right.
And he seems to suggest that anger stems from a different place than fear.
He makes a distinction between fear,
Okay.
which is often rooted in a sense of vulnerability,
Yeah.
and anger, which he sees as arising from hurt pride, and a clinging to an idealized self-image.
Okay.
When that image is threatened,
Right.
when our ego feels bruised, anger flares up.
So it's like he's saying that anger is more about protecting our ego, our sense of self-importance,
Right.
rather than protecting ourselves from actual harm.
I think that's a really insightful distinction.
Yeah, it's like we're reacting to a story we've created about ourselves,
Right.
rather than directly responding to the situation at hand.
Absolutely. And he takes this even further,
Okay.
connecting personal anger to societal violence.
Wow.
He views large-scale violence as a historical process
Okay.
that stems from individual ignorance
Okay.
and these very same animalistic instincts that
Yeah.
we've been discussing.
Okay.
He suggests that each time we indulge in hate or aggression,
Yeah.
we're perpetuating that cycle of violence on a personal level.
So he's basically making a connection between our personal struggles.
He's drawing a parallel
Okay.
between our personal struggles with fear and anger
Yeah.
and the larger problems of violence and conflict in the world.
Wow, that's pretty heavy stuff.
It is.
It's a lot to consider.
But it's also, I think, a really important connection to make.
This makes me think about how he talks about boredom,
Yeah, boredom.
which might seem like a more trivial emotion
Right.
compared to fear and anger,
Yeah.
but he actually dedicates a significant portion of the book to it.
That's right.
Like, why do you think he gives boredom so much attention?
Well, he suggests that boredom stems from a lack of genuine interest in the world around us.
Okay.
And he links that lack of interest to a dullness of mind,
Interesting.
a kind of spiritual lethargy that arises from our constant attempts to escape suffering,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
to cling to rigid beliefs and to keep ourselves busy with distractions.
Okay.
It's like he's asking us to consider, what are we all running from?
That's a good question.
What's driving this need
Yeah.
for constant stimulation
Right.
and distraction?
It reminds me of that analogy he uses,
Oh, yeah.
comparing us to squirrels running in a cage.
Yes.
We keep ourselves busy,
Right.
but we're not really getting
We're
anywhere.
just spinning our wheels.
Yeah.
And he contrasts that frantic activity with what he calls true interest, which isn't about seeking rewards or acquiring things,
Right.
but about finding joy in the activity itself,
Yeah.
in the simple act of being fully present and engaged with the world around us.
It makes you wonder, what would it look like
Yeah.
to approach our lives with that kind of genuine interest,
Right.
free from the need for constant stimulation and external validation?
That's a powerful question to ponder.
It is, isn't it?
And it leads us to another set of emotions he explores.
Okay.
Sorrow, loneliness, and dependence.
Yeah,
These are feelings that many of us try to avoid.
we do.
But Krishnamurti suggests that facing them head on is crucial for our growth and understanding.
Okay. We left off talking about how Krishnamurti encourages us to face these difficult emotions like sorrow and loneliness head on instead of always trying to avoid them.
Yeah, it's like he's saying lean into the discomfort.
Yeah. And what I found really insightful was how he connects sorrow to this sense of emptiness we might feel,
Right.
almost like a void we're constantly trying to fill with external things.
It's like we're looking for something outside of ourselves to complete us,
Yeah.
make us feel whole.
To make us feel whole.
Yeah. But Krishnamurti suggests that, true fulfillment can only be found by turning inward, by confronting that emptiness and understanding its roots.
He's really challenging a lot of our deeply ingrained beliefs, isn't he?
He is.
It's like he's saying, stop looking for happiness in all the wrong places.
Right.
And start exploring what's going on inside your own heart and mind.
Yeah, it's a radical shift in perspective.
And speaking of challenging beliefs,
Yeah.
last time we were getting into his ideas about love and dependence,
Right.
which definitely raised some eyebrows for me.
Yeah, he has some pretty radical perspectives on love, doesn't he?
He does. He points out that our relationships often become a source of agony
They do.
because we approach them with a sense of possessiveness and neediness.
Yeah, we cling to the other person,
Yeah.
expecting them to, fill that void within us.
Right.
And that ultimately leads to more suffering.
It makes sense. If we're coming from a place of emptiness and insecurity,
Right.
we're more likely to try to control the other person,
Absolutely.
to make them fit into our idea of what a perfect relationship should look like.
Right. It's like we're trying to force them into a box.
And that never ends well, does it?
It rarely does.
He even says that this kind of dependence can actually breed fear and jealousy.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's like the more we cling to someone,
Right.
the more afraid we become of losing them.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
The fear of losing the other person becomes so intense
Right.
that we start acting in ways that actually push them away.
Oh, that's so true.
But what's interesting is that Krishnamurti doesn't advocate for a life of isolation or detachment.
Yeah.
He simply suggests that true love
Yeah.
can't be forced or cultivated.
Right.
It can only arise when the mind is quiet,
Okay.
free from the demands and anxieties of the self.
So it's not about trying to make ourselves love someone, but about creating the inner conditions for love to emerge naturally.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating a sense of inner peace and wholeness so that we can approach relationships from a place of abundance rather than scarcity.
I like that.
Yeah.
This reminds me of what he says about meditation.
Yeah.
His definition of meditation seems very different from what we typically think of.
Oh, for sure.
It's not about sitting in a lotus position
Right.
or chanting mantras.
It's about something much deeper, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
For Krishnamurti, meditation isn't a technique or a practice that's separate from daily life.
Right.
It's about cultivating a state of heightened awareness,
Yeah.
of observing our thoughts and feelings without judgment in every moment of our lives.
It's like a constant state of mindfulness.
Yeah. He describes it as a process of seeing things as they are,
Yeah.
without the filters of our preconceived notions and beliefs.
Right.
It's like we're peeling back the layers of conditioning
Yeah.
and seeing the world with fresh eyes.
And he stresses that this stillness of mind
Yeah.
isn't about becoming passive or dull.
Right.
It's actually a state of intense alertness,
Okay.
a receptivity to what's happening both within us and around us. So
Interesting.
it's like we're finally waking up from a dream
Yeah.
and experiencing the world in all its vibrancy and immediacy.
So instead of seeing meditation as something we do for 20 minutes a day,
Right.
he's encouraging us to bring that meditative quality of attention to everything we do.
Exactly.
Whether we're eating, working, interacting with others,
Yeah.
or simply walking in nature,
Yeah.
we can practice being fully present in that moment.
And as we cultivate this awareness, as we start to pay closer attention to our inner world,
Yeah.
we might begin to notice some interesting things.
Okay. Like what?
We might start to see how often our thoughts and actions are driven by fear,
Right.
insecurity, or the desire for approval.
Okay.
We might realize how much energy we waste on worrying about the past or fretting about the future. And we might even begin to question some of the beliefs and assumptions that we've been carrying around for years, beliefs that have been shaping our perceptions and limiting our potential.
This self-reflection sounds like it could be a pretty uncomfortable process.
It can be.
Are we supposed to just sit with those uncomfortable feelings?
Well, he believed that facing those uncomfortable truths about ourselves was essential for growth and liberation.
Okay.
It's like he was saying the only way out is through,
Wow.
by bringing awareness to our shadows,
Okay.
to the parts of ourselves that we tend to avoid or deny.
Right.
We can start to loosen their grip on us.
So it's not about judging ourselves or trying to force ourselves to be different,
No.
but simply about acknowledging what is,
Exactly.
with a sense of curiosity and compassion.
Yes. And he uses a really powerful image to describe what can happen when we start to loosen the grip of those conditioned patterns.
Okay.
He talks about the energy
Yeah.
that we often waste in conflict, in pursuing fleeting pleasures, in clinging to beliefs and ideologies that no longer serve us.
Yeah.
And he suggests that when we're able to quiet the mind,
Okay.
to free up that energy that's been trapped in those unproductive patterns,
Yeah.
something remarkable happens.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat here.
I bet you are.
What happens? Give us the juicy details.
He describes it as an explosion of consciousness.
How?
It's not something we can force or contrive.
Okay.
It's a natural unfolding that occurs when the mind is truly still,
Right.
when we've let go of our clinging and grasping.
Yeah.
And in that moment,
Yeah.
our perception of ourselves and the world can shift dramatically.
You know, it's interesting you say that.
Yeah.
It reminds me of those aha moments we sometimes experience.
Right.
Those sudden flashes of insight
Yes.
where a limiting belief we've held for years suddenly falls away.
Yeah.
And we see the world with fresh eyes.
Ah.
Is that what he's talking about, but on a grander scale?
I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It's like we're finally seeing through the illusions
Yeah.
that have been clouding our vision.
Right.
We're no longer bound by the stories we've been telling ourselves about who we are and what's possible.
So we're starting to understand how this inner transformation might occur.
Right.
But I'm curious about the why behind all of this.
Okay.
What's the ultimate point of all this self-knowledge and stillness?
Yeah.
What's the end game here?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it leads us to one of the most profound themes in Krishnamurti's work.
Okay.
The question of what it means to truly live a fulfilling life.
He seems to suggest that most of us aren't really living at all,
Right.
but just going through the motions,
Yeah.
caught in these endless cycles of desire, fear, and conflict.
He challenges us to consider
Yeah.
whether a life driven by imitation, conformity,
Right.
and the pursuit of external rewards can ever lead to lasting happiness.
It's like he's saying that true fulfillment
Yeah.
can't be found in chasing after things or trying to become someone we're not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he points out that
Yeah.
the very act of searching for a purpose for our lives
Right.
often stems from a sense of emptiness,
Right.
a feeling that something is missing.
Right.
And he suggests that if we truly understood how to live,
Yeah.
the very act of living would be enough.
Wow.
We wouldn't need to search for meaning or purpose
Yeah.
because it would be woven into the fabric of our everyday experience.
It's a radical idea, isn't it?
It is.
To find fulfillment, not in achieving some distant goal,
Right.
but in the present moment, in the simple act of being.
Exactly.
But how do we get there?
Right.
How do we move from a life of striving and seeking
Yeah.
to a life of true contentment and joy?
Yeah.
Where's the roadmap?
That's a great question.
So we've covered a lot of ground, with J. Krishnamurti's ideas about self-knowledge and stillness and living more fulfilling life.
We have.
But I think a lot of us are probably wondering how to actually put all this into practice.
Right.
He doesn't exactly give us a step-by-step guide, does he?
He wasn't big on offering, rigid rules or formulas.
Yeah.
He believed that true transformation couldn't be imposed from the outside.
Right.
It had to come from a deep understanding of oneself,
Right.
which is going to be different for everyone.
So how do we even begin?
Right.
What's the first step on this journey of self-discovery?
Well, if there's one thing that Krishnamurti emphasizes repeatedly,
Okay.
it's the importance of awareness.
Okay.
He encourages us to pay close attention to our thoughts,
Yeah.
feelings, and actions,
Right.
but without judgment.
Right.
It's like becoming a curious observer
Okay.
of our own inner world.
That sounds simple enough.
Right.
But our minds are constantly racing, jumping from one thought to the next.
Oh, yeah.
How do we actually cultivate that kind of awareness
Right.
amidst all the mental chatter?
It's definitely a practice,
Yeah,
and it takes time and patience.
it does.
He often uses the metaphor of the mind being like a wild horse,
Okay.
easily distracted
Right.
and pulled in different directions.
Yeah.
But with practice,
Yeah.
we can train our minds to be more focused and present.
So what are some practical ways
Yeah.
to train that wild horse, so to speak?
Well, he talks a lot about the importance of creating space
Okay.
for stillness and reflection.
Okay.
And he suggests that this stillness
Yeah.
isn't about suppressing our thoughts or emotions,
Okay.
but about simply observing them without getting swept away by them.
Right.
It's like creating a little distance between ourselves
Okay.
and that constant stream of mental activity so that we can see it more clearly.
That reminds me a lot of mindfulness practices like meditation,
Right.
which have become increasingly popular these days.
They have.
Would you say those are helpful tools for cultivating this kind of awareness?
There are definitely parallels.
Yeah.
But Krishnamurti's approach goes beyond specific techniques. He encourages us to bring this quality of attention,
Okay.
everything we do,
Yeah.
not just during formal meditation practice.
Right.
So whether we're eating, working, interacting with others, or just taking a walk in nature,
Yeah.
we can practice being fully present in that moment,
Okay.
noticing the sensations, the thoughts, the feelings that arise
Yeah.
without getting carried away by them.
So it's about integrating that mindfulness into the fabric of our daily lives,
Exactly.
rather than treating it as a separate activity.
Right.
I like that. It makes it seem a lot less daunting.
It does.
But I imagine as we start to pay closer attention,
Yeah.
we might start to notice some uncomfortable things about ourselves.
Yeah.
Things we'd rather not see.
Right. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
We might start to see how often our thoughts and actions
Yeah.
are driven by fear, insecurity, or the need for approval.
Yeah.
We might realize how much energy we waste on dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. And we might even start to question some of the beliefs and assumptions that have been shaping our perceptions and holding us back.
That doesn't sound particularly fun.
No, it doesn't.
What are we supposed to do
Right?
with all that uncomfortable stuff that surfaces?
Well, it's not about judging ourselves or trying to force ourselves to be different.
Okay.
It's about simply acknowledging what is, with a sense of curiosity and compassion.
Okay.
Krishnamurti believed that facing those uncomfortable truths about ourselves
Yeah.
was essential for growth and liberation.
Yeah.
It's like he was saying, the only way out is through.
I love that quote. The only way out is through.
That's a good one.
So by bringing awareness to our shadows,
Yeah.
by shining a light on those parts of ourselves that we tend to avoid or deny,
Right.
we can start to loosen their grip on us
Exactly.
and create space for something new to emerge.
Yes. And as we start to see things more clearly,
Okay.
as we become less entangled in the dramas of our own minds,
Mhm.
we might find that our relationships with others begin to shift as well.
How so?
Okay.
What does that look like in practice?
Well, if we're less consumed by our own needs and anxieties,
Okay.
we're more present and available for the people in our lives.
Right.
We're able to listen more deeply,
Yeah.
to connect on a more authentic level.
That makes sense. We're less likely to project our own insecurities onto others
Right.
or try to control their behavior.
Exactly. And we're more open to experiencing love and compassion in a deeper, more unconditional way.
Right.
It's about recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of each individual, regardless of their flaws or imperfections.
That sounds a lot like what Krishnamurti was talking about.
Yeah.
When he described true love as a state of non-attachment and acceptance,
Right.
it's about loving someone for who they are,
Yeah.
not for who we want them to be.
I got it interesting. It's about letting go of our expectations and allowing the relationship to unfold naturally
Right.
without trying to force it into a certain mold.
Okay, so we're starting to see how Krishnamurti's ideas can translate into real-world changes in our relationships. But what about work and our sense of purpose in the world?
That's another area where his teachings can have a profound impact.
Okay.
He encourages us to find work that aligns with our passions and values, not just work that brings, financial security or social status.
Right. He talks about the importance of finding a vocation that allows us to express our creativity
Yes.
and contribute something meaningful to the world.
And he suggests that when we're engaged in work that we truly love,
Yeah.
the distinction between work and play begins to dissolve.
Hmm.
It becomes less about toiling away at a job and more about pursuing something that brings us joy and fulfillment.
So it's not just about finding a fulfilling job.
There it
It's
is.
about living a life that feels meaningful and purposeful on a deeper level.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
And that sense of purpose can extend beyond our professional lives
Oh.
to encompass our relationships, our communities, and our engagement with the world around us.
Yeah.
It's about finding ways to express our unique gifts and make a positive contribution no matter how small.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the work of J. Krishnamurti,
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say he's offered us a lot to think about.
A lot.
He's presented a vision of a world
Yeah.
where individuals are awake,
Right.
aware, and living in alignment with their true selves.
Absolutely.
And while he didn't offer any easy answers or quick fixes,
Right.
he's given us a starting point, a path to explore.
He's challenged us to question everything we think we know
Yeah.
about ourselves and the world around us.
Yeah.
He's invited us to step out of the confines of our conditioned minds
Right.
and embrace a more expansive,
Yeah.
compassionate way of being.
And he's reminded us that the journey of self-discovery is a lifelong adventure,
It is.
one that requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to face our fears and embrace the unknown.
Absolutely.
So as we leave you today, we invite you to consider this. What one small change could you make in your daily life to cultivate more awareness and stillness in your own mind?
It's a good question.
It might be starting a meditation practice,
Yeah.
paying closer attention to your breath,
Right.
or simply taking a few moments each day to observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment.
It could be any of those things.
That could be.
It might be approaching your relationships with more curiosity and openness,
Yeah.
or seeking out work that feels more aligned with your passions.
Whatever it is, we encourage you to take that first step.
Yes.
Because as Krishnamurti so wisely said, the greatest revolution is the revolution within.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of J. Krishnamurti.
Until next time.